to talk mostly about the Consumer Product Safety Commission, and I'll start by agreeing with my fellow panelists. I have to give the Obama administration very high marks with where the CPSC is now 1 year into the administration. Like Peg, though, I need to bring you back a little bit to the Bush administration in order to explain why we in the consumer advocacy community are so very excited about the direction that the CPSC is taking right now. I've been either advocating for product safety or during the Clinton administration actually worked at the Consumer Product Safety Commission for about 25 years. And I have to say that the agency really reached its depths during the Bush administration. It was just a horrendous time for product safety protection in America. And just to, I don't want to go too much into history, but I just have to tell you, even from the very beginning, when President Bush came into office, his very first nominee to be the chairman of the CPSC went down in a committee vote, a party line 10-9 committee vote in the Senate Commerce Committee. That was the first Bush nominee to go down, even by the Democratic Congress. But that's how they viewed how bad that nomination was. The next person who came in to be the chair of the CPSC was Hal Stratton. His nomination did go through, and he was confirmed, and he was the chair for about 4 years. But I have to tell you, even he made no secret of the fact that he sought a, I think, more important job in the administration than the chair of the CPSC, and really ran the agency with neglect would be a nice term for the way he ran the agency. When he left in 2006, the next Bush nominee was a guy who used to lobby for the National Association of Manufacturers, and when it was revealed in the New York Times that NAM was going to hand him a $150,000 severance package to then go to CPSC and regulate NAM's members, he withdrew his nomination. From 2006 through until President Obama came into office, the CPSC was run with an acting chair, a Bush nominee named Nancy Nord, and one Democratic holdover from the Clinton administration, Thomas Moore, who's actually still at the agency. That left 2 commissioners running CPSC for 2.5 years, 2 to 3 years. That for most of that time, the agency didn't have a quorum. Even when they had a quorum, the 2 sitting commissioners couldn't agree even to meet, let alone to vote on anything affirmatively. So the agency was essentially just gliding by, doing very, very little, and then the firestorm hit that most people remember in 2007, what's been dubbed the year of the recall. And millions and millions of children's products that were beloved in many people's homes that bore names like Dora the Explorer and Thomas the Train and Barbie were found to have lead levels that sometimes were 200 times higher than the lead levels that under law that were allowed. This drew, as you can imagine, tremendous public concern, congressional concern. It was a very, very big issue, and we were faced with an agency that had an acting head who didn't really much care for the mission of product safety, and was also fairly incapable of reacting. And her reaction to this firestorm was very defensive. She blamed the media for making a big thing out of nothing. She blamed parents for being overly concerned about what she deemed to be not really a great hazard. And there was outrage. There was bipartisan public outrage, and there was bipartisan congressional outrage. And the reason this was important to go through this history for you is because it actually led to the most significant legislation on product safety that had been passed by the U.S. Congress since CPSC was founded in the early 1970s. And so this was, while President Bush was in office, there was a very strong product safety law that was passed by Congress. 3 senators voted against it and 1 House member voted against it. That's how popular the concept of re-energizing this agency was. And the legislation that passed in August of 2008 is the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, CPSIA. CPSC was never very good with very catchy acronyms, so we're stuck with it. But the CPSIA really made tremendous advances for the agency. The budget went from $80 million a year, which I know sounds so small to anybody who deals with government budgets, but such as it is, that was the CPSC's budget. And then the level in the CPSIA would bring it up to $136 million a year by 2014, which for CPSC, it was an extraordinary gain. And so far, those increases, those step increases that are established in the law have been coming to pass, which enabled the agency, of course, to hire a lot more staff, to get a new lab. Most people remember the stories about the lab and Bob the toy tester, so that's getting improved. And in addition, there were strict lead limits that were put in the law, more authority for the agency, a public safety database that was required for CPSC to create that would allow consumers to look up specific products on the internet and to find out about consumer complaints. That has not existed and has never existed and will be up and running, I think, in 2011. The law also increased civil penalties and gave the agency in general a lot more authority. But what happened in August 2008, Nancy Nord was still running the agency, and she in fact had opposed many of the provisions in the legislation that ultimately passed, and she essentially slow-walked the implementation of the legislation. And so enter President Obama at the beginning of last year. And unfortunately, because of CPSC's statutes, he couldn't change the leadership of the agency without a full-blown nomination and confirmation. So that the agency, unfortunately, did languish for about half the year in 2009 until President Obama's nominee to be the chair of CPSC was confirmed in June, and her name is Inez Tenenbaum, and she came in to the agency and she did a press conference on her first day on the job. Well, that showed change just in and of itself, because the Bush agency shied away from the press because their press coverage was never good. Chairman Tenenbaum really hit the ground running, and she's been doing a great job. And so what we've seen since she's been there, and it's only, again, been really since July that we've had this change in leadership. The first thing is that she is very visible, she's very proactive, she's been visible both at the agency in meetings and bringing the stakeholders in and meeting all the various stakeholders, industry to consumers to experts to state officials, to get their input in what the agency is doing and to really have a give and take. And she's been on TV and she's been putting the product safety message out there, which really has been quite dormant for about 8 years. She has shown a very strong commitment to the implementation of the CPSIA. She has announced that she's going to meet all the deadlines, that she's incredibly committed to the goals of the law and to getting it implemented, and particularly is focusing on the product safety public database, which is very, very important to the consumer advocacy community. She started a new rulemaking on sort of the new generation of ATVs that are called ROVs, which is significant because CPSC did very little rulemaking in the last 8 years, and in general, as an agency, hasn't done a lot of rulemaking, and so that's a significant new one. And in general, she's been very quick and aggressive in reaction to product hazards. She is not shy about going out and putting a message out saying, for example, children should not be playing with cheap jewelry because we just found cadmium in jewelry that came over from China. And even though the agency doesn't have a rule on cadmium, even though they don't necessarily have a regulation or a level that would be safe or unsafe of cadmium in jewelry, she said, you know what? Don't let your kids play with it until we figure out what's the story is and can give you better guidance. She's erring on the side of safety, which is again something that we haven't seen for about 8 years. We're very excited to have Chairman Tenenbaum and the other new Democratic Commissioner, Bob Adler, at the agency. They've been doing a great job. And just to end with what we'd like to see a little bit more of, and I'm sure it will come as they get their sea legs, is perhaps a little more creativity in the use of the tools and the authorities that CPSC already has to actually get even quicker reactions to product hazards than we've seen in the past.